I kept seeing this sequin dress with a bow on my For You page and I decided that I wanted to make it. I'm sure you've seen this dress already, it's all over TikTok and it's from H&M. And then I also saw that people were saying that it was kind of ugly, but I thought it was cute and I wanted to make my own version. So, you know, but I looked it up and it was like $85, but then I saw people on TikTok saying that they raised the price to be over $100. So I'm not really sure, but it was sold out anyway, so, you know, I only ended up spending $30 on materials for this dress though, which was really nice, and it ended up being pretty easy to make. I would rate it like probably a 3 out of 10 on difficulty, just because it was my first time working with sequin mesh, but you know, besides that, it only ended up taking me like 2 days to finish, which was really nice. So, anyway, that's enough rambling, let's just get into this video. Before I bought my fabric, I made this mini mock-up pattern out of graph paper to see how much fabric I would need. And I basically just used it as a guide, as well as some of my other dresses and like clothes to make a mock-up. I used an old sheet. This is the same sheet as my Alice in Shining Twins dress that I made for my Halloween costumes video. And this is basically the rough pattern I made. A good tip is to trace your clothes, like you saw me tracing my like tank top and my dresses. I basically just combined a sharp pattern with an A-line skirt pattern, and then the sleeves are just like a classic bell sleeve pattern. If you want it a bit more form-fitting, because mine was kind of baggy, then just cinch in the sides or just make it a bit smaller. And also, if you have a bigger chest, then you can add darts on the side. And then I basically just sewed my mock-up together. It was very simple. I used a wide stitch, you know, because I was gonna take it apart later. And then I put it on my dress form so I could make adjustments. I also tried it on and it fit me. So, oh my god, it literally gives hospital gown, especially in the blue color, and it just like sitting there. That's why I tried it on. It didn't give hospital gown as much when I tried it on, but basically all I did was make the back part a bit deeper and then shorten it, because I've always had a problem with making my dresses too short, so now I make them extra long just to be safe. So yeah, then I took my mock-up apart and used it as my pattern for my dress and traced it out onto my fabric. So at first I checked online to find sequin fabric because, you know, it's not the most common fabric and it can get a bit expensive, so I wanted to see if I could find discounted or like more affordable fabric online. I was looking for around $15 a yard or less. Also, I was looking at the color options because I like the white and black of the original H&M dress, but I wanted to make it my own, but still make it kind of winter/holiday-ish, I guess. The only fabric store near me is Joann's, so I checked their website first, and I got super lucky when I found this periwinkle blue sequin fabrics that was only $10 a yard because it was part of their last chance fabrics, which I was super lucky with. It was a mesh, so it was see-through, so I needed to get some sort of lining. And again, I got lucky with this satin that was literally the same color as the mesh, also part of their last chance fabrics. The only problem with it is that there were only 2 yards left, and I originally wanted to get 2.5 to 3 yards, which I would recommend getting if you're making this dress because it's always better to overestimate. But I did some math and I believe that I could make it work with just 2 yards. So I got 2 yards of each. I also got a discount if I ordered ahead of time and picked it up, so that's what I did. And after all the discounts, I ended up saving almost like $60, which is kind of insane. I also found this fabric from online fabric store that is fairly affordable. I'll link it below. And when I went to the store to pick up my fabric, I looked at the ribbon section for the bow, but decided to just make it out of fabric because the ribbons were kind of pricey. So I got half a yard of pretty glitter satin that you'll see later, and at the end I ended up spending around like less than $30 on fabric for this, which is really great. I also looked at all the other sequins in the fabric section just to see, and I found some different options. That red one would be so perfect. I think it was like $14 a yard, and you probably wouldn't need a lining if you didn't want to do it because it was like a velvet sequins. Anyway, this sequin fabric was actually a nightmare though. Like, cutting it was the worst because they got everywhere, which I expected, but like, oh my god. And sewing it would like fling sequins just into my machine, onto my floor, on my desk. I'm literally going to be finding sequins for the rest of my life. This is just after cutting my sequins. There was so much more after I finished this dress, but you know, I should have expected it. And then I started sewing. Well, first I ironed it. Test your iron always on your fabric. That's what, because you don't want to burn or melt your fabric. So I just ironed the satin because it was a bit wrinkly. You can't iron sequins because it was also on mesh and I would have melted it, but it was fine. I sewed the lining together first. I just sewed the shoulder parts and then I sewed on the sleeves. And then I pressed the seams and everything. Also, I zigzagged over the seams just to make everything lay flat because the satin was kind of thick. So I just wanted to make sure everything was like flat and neat looking, so that's why I just zigzagged over it. I don't think I showed it. I show you with the sequins. But yeah, after I sewed the satin parts together, I sewed the sequins. The same thing, just the shoulders and then the sleeves. And again, to make everything lay flat because I could not iron this fabric, I just zigzagged over it. And I showed you right there. I did that on the shoulder and then the sleeves. And then I had to pin the two pieces together. It's weird, this lighting makes it look like I sewed the sleeves on wrong, but I swear that was like the shiny side. The shiny side was up. It was the shiny side's the right side, and I swear I sewed it on right. Basically, here I am showing you how I want my dress to look with the shiny side up with the sequins. So then I flipped everything around and I hope this makes sense, I basically pinned the sequin fabric right side to the satin fabric wrong side. So basically the like matte side of the satin was facing the shiny sequins, if that makes sense. And then I basically pinned it together and sewed it. To make things easier, because the mesh was stretchy and the satin wasn't, I did one section at a time. I did the sleeves, and then I did the sleeves first and then the main dress part. And I basically just lined everything up with like the seams I already made, like the shoulder parts, the sleeve parts. If that makes sense, I'm doing my best to explain this. And there was some excess fabric that I just cut off because I was going to be turning it inside out anyway. I swear I filmed me turning it inside out. I don't know where the footage went, but I basically left the like neck hole open so that I could flip everything inside out. So yeah, you can see there that it's flipped inside out, and I basically just pinned the sleeves together and then the like sides together and sewed it down. I did one side at a time just to make life easier, you know? This was a pretty simple project. Like the most difficult part was probably cutting out the fabric, and the sequin was so hard to sew over. I think you can see it a couple times, me like fighting with my sewing machine. But yeah, the hardest part was the fabric, but besides that, this was honestly a pretty easy dress. And then after I sewed the sides together, I top stitched around the edges of the sleeves and also along the bottom of the dress to make it lay flat, because again, I couldn't iron it because of the sequins. They would melt. And that just made everything lay flat, and it looked super nice. You can't really see the stitching, which was good because of the sequins. And then for the neck, to close it up, I just did a rolled hem. Actually, I zigzagged around it first to, you know, connect the two pieces of fabric, and then I folded it over and just straight stitched it. And then the last thing was to make the bow. Here is the first bow I made. I ended up making a bigger one because I didn't like how like tiny this one turned out, but I followed the same steps, so here we go. I cut out two rectangles. This fabric was super thin, so I had to like layer everything. So I cut out two squares to sew together, and then a super long, and then a long rectangle for the like main bow part. And then I also ironed this fabric. I sewed the long rectangle together and then flipped it inside out and pressed it. And then I sewed the square pieces together, right sides together, and then flipped them inside out and pressed them. And then I top stitched around everything to make it lay nice and flat. So there I was showing you I'm top stitching that square I just made, and then I also did the the long rectangle, I top stitched that. And then I had to like actually make the bow. And then I took the long rectangle and I folded both ends into the middle. And then I took just a sewing needle and straight stitched and ran a straight stitch across and pulled it to gather it to make the bow. And then I sewed it to make it super secure. And then with the square, I found the middle and folded two of the corners into the middle, pinned it again, and then ran another straight stitch across. This fabric got kind of difficult because it was like thick, so I had to use my pliers to help the needle get through, but you know, it worked. And then I pulled it to gather it again. And then I sewed those two pieces together to create the bow. Also, I forgot to film this part, but I made a little rectangle for the center just the same way as the other rectangle. And I just sewed it on with a whip stitch. And then you have your bow. Here are some of the pictures of the bigger bow I made, because I had to repurpose this one because I only got so much fabric. And there are the measurements. And then I took my dress and draped it onto my mannequin, pinned on the bow to see where I wanted it to lay so that I could make that like strip attaching the bow to the dress. And I just figured out where I wanted it, and I did the same thing I did with that rectangle. I sewed a straight stitch across the middle, pulled it together, and then I also sewed that onto the back of the bow, and then I like gathered the ends, and then I sewed them onto my dress with, I actually sewed it on with my machine. I think I tried to hand stitch it and then I used my machine. But yeah, that was the last step. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was super fun to make, and I love how this dress came out. It's super fun, it's super flowy. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I put on makeup for this video for once, which I like never do, so that was super fun. But yeah, comment, like, subscribe, share this video if you enjoyed it, and stay tuned for my next video. I am super excited for that, and I hope you guys have a great day. I will see you guys next time.